Lieutenant Jack Miller stood at the observation deck of Nexus Station, watching the stars. The space station hung in the neutral zone between human territory and the vast stellar empire. Jack had been sent here as part of the diplomatic team to ease tensions between the two species. After decades of Cold War, both sides had finally agreed to talk. "Beautiful, aren't they?" a melodic voice said behind him. Jack turned and froze. Standing there was Princess Lyra of the Stellar Empire. Her skin had a subtle blue glow, and her eyes were large and silver, like polished moons. The small crystals that dotted her forehead caught the starlight. She wore the formal robes of the royal family, with symbols of her rank woven into the fabric. "The stars, I mean," she added, moving to stand beside him. Jack nodded, trying to remain calm. "Yes, they are. Though I'm surprised to see you here alone, Your Highness. I thought royal members of the Empire always traveled with guards." "Sometimes even a princess needs a moment of peace," Lyra said. "The talks today were difficult." Jack couldn't argue with that. The human ambassador and the Empire's head minister had spent hours arguing over trade routes and border patrols. "Lieutenant Miller, correct?" she asked. "Yes. I'm surprised you remember my name." "I make it a point to know everyone at these meetings," she said. "Even the quiet ones who stand in the back and watch everything." Jack smiled despite himself. She was right. He preferred to observe rather than speak during the diplomatic sessions. A small device on Lyra's wrist beeped. She glanced at it and frowned. Another alert. "The mining colony on Crest is reporting unusual activity near the human border." "That's odd," Jack said, forgetting formal protocol. "Our ships aren't scheduled to be in that sector." Their eyes met, and for a moment, concerns about their respective species fell away. They were just two people facing a potential problem. "Would you like to look at the data with me?" Lyra asked. Two perspectives might be better than one. Jack hesitated. Working directly with the alien princess wasn't in his mission parameters. But if there was trouble brewing, it could destroy the fragile peace talks. "Lead the way, Your Highness." They walked to a small command room where Lyra brought up holographic maps of the border region. Jack studied them carefully. "There," he pointed. "Those energy readings don't match our ship patterns, and they don't look like your Empire's ships either." Lyra zoomed in on the area. "You're right. This is a third party. Pirates, perhaps, trying to create conflict between our people." For the next 3 hours, they worked side by side, analyzing data and sending warnings to both human and Empire ships in the area. Their quick action prevented what could have been a deadly misunderstanding. As they finished, Lyra turned to Jack. "You play Cosmic Conquest?" she asked, noticing his keychain with the game's symbol. "Since I was a child," Jack admitted. "Do your people play it too?" "It was invented in the Empire," Lyra said with a smile. "I'm the regional champion in the Palace District." "I find that hard to believe," Jack said with a small grin. Lyra raised her eyebrow crystals, a gesture Jack would later learn meant she was accepting a challenge. "Perhaps we could play sometime. I could teach you some real strategy." "I'd like that," Jack said, surprised by how much he meant it. As they left the command room, both knew something had changed. What had started as a diplomatic necessity had turned into something more personal. Neither could have guessed where this first meeting would lead: to forbidden romance, an impossible pregnancy, and a child who would change the fate of two civilizations. But for now, it was simply a human and an alien princess, finding unexpected common ground among the stars. Over the next 3 months, Jack and Lyra found more and more reasons to meet. What began as weekly games of Cosmic Conquest soon became daily meetings in quiet corners of Nexus Station. "Your move," Lyra said, her silver eyes watching Jack carefully as he studied the game board. Jack moved his starship piece across 3 sectors. "I believe that put your home planet in danger, Princess." Lyra smiled. "Bold move, Lieutenant, but perhaps too bold." With a quick flick of her slender blue fingers, she revealed her hidden defense fleet and captured his ship. You tricked me, Jack laughed. Strategy, she corrected him. There's a difference. Their games often stretched late into the station's artificial night. During these quiet hours, they shared stories of their worlds. So humans really keep tiny versions of other species in their homes. As companions, Lyra asked one night, her face showing both confusion and wonder. Pets, Jack explained. Dogs, cats, birds. They're not tiny versions of people. They're different animals that we bond with. Fascinating, Lyra said. In the Empire, we believe all creatures should remain in their natural environments. Though I must admit, I've always been curious about these cats. Jack showed her pictures from Earth on his data pad, and Lyra told him about the crystal forests of her homeworld, where trees grew gems instead of leaves. As diplomats from both sides noticed their growing friendship, warnings came quickly. The princess is not for you, Jack's commander told him bluntly. Fraternizing with the Empire royalty could damage everything we're working for. Jack nodded and promised to keep their interactions professional. But that same evening, he met Lyra in the station's arboretum, a place filled with plants from 100 worlds. My father's minister sent me a message today, Lyra said as they walked among glowing flowers. He believes I am spending too much time with you. My commander said something similar, Jack admitted. They stopped walking and looked at each other. The blue glow of Lyra's skin seemed brighter in the dim light of the arboretum. Perhaps they're right, Lyra whispered. This is complicated. It doesn't feel complicated when I'm with you, Jack said. He reached out slowly and touched her hand. Her skin was warm, warmer than human skin, and seemed to pulse gently with light where he touched it. Neither of them planned what happened next. Their meetings became more secret, held in forgotten maintenance rooms or observation decks during off hours. They learned the differences between their species, how Lyra's people communicated not just with words but with subtle changes in their skin's glow, how humans expressed so much through tiny facial movements that her people never made. Your kind feels everything so strongly, Lyra said once as they watched a nebula from a small viewport. It's written all over you, all the time. And your people hide everything, Jack replied, except from those who know how to look. He had learned to read her now, how the crystals on her forehead sparkled when she was happy, how her skin dimmed when she was thinking deeply. Their time together was borrowed, and they both knew it. The peace talks were progressing. Soon, there would be no reason for either of them to remain on Nexus Station. Then came the night of the diplomatic breakthrough. After months of tension, human and Empire negotiators had finally reached an agreement on the disputed border sectors. I'm being recalled to the Empire tomorrow, Lyra told Jack when they met in their secret place one last time. The treaty will be signed, and my duty here is done. Jack felt the news like a physical blow. So quickly. Royal ships move fast, she said, her voice soft. That night, they'd broke the final taboo. Two species that had been on the edge of war found perfect harmony in each other's arms. Lyra's skin glowed brighter than Jack had ever seen it, filling the small room with blue light as they came together. Neither suspected that this night would create something that both their sciences had declared impossible, a new life carried within an alien princess with a human father. 6 months passed since Lyra's departure. Jack had been reassigned to Earth's diplomatic headquarters in Geneva, where he spent his days reading reports about the new peace with the Stellar Empire. The work was important, but felt empty without Lyra's presence. He thought of her often, her silver eyes, the gentle blue glow of her skin, the musical sound of her laugh. Each night, he checked for messages from her, but diplomatic channels remained formal and cold. It seemed their time together had been just a brief moment of connection, now faded into memory. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Jack sat in his small apartment, a glass of whiskey in his hand. The soft patter of raindrops against his window was the only sound until his personal communication device suddenly lit up with an unusual pattern. The screen flickered, bypassing all security protocols. This wasn't a standard transmission. It used a frequency that shouldn't have been accessible to Earth technology. Then her face appeared. "Lyra," Jack whispered, sitting up straight. The princess looked different. Her normally perfect appearance was slightly disheveled, and the crystals on her forehead pulsed with a rhythm he had never seen before. She glanced over her shoulder nervously before speaking. "Jack, I hope this message finds you. I've had to use some unconventional methods to reach you." Her voice was the same melodic sound he remembered, but there was tension in it now. "I don't have much time, so I must be direct." She paused, taking a deep breath. Her skin glowed brighter for a moment. "Something has happened. Something our scientists said was impossible." Jack leaned closer to the screen, his heart pounding. "I'm pregnant, Jack, with your child." The glass slipped from Jack's hand, shattering on the floor. He barely noticed. "Our medical experts are baffled," Lyra continued. "Cross-species reproduction has never occurred between humans and my people. They've run every test possible, and there's no doubt the child carries both our genetic patterns." She placed a hand over her midsection, which Jack now noticed showed a slight curve beneath her royal garments. "The leading theory is that human DNA is remarkably adaptable. Your species' genetics apparently have a unique ability to harmonize with other life forms, something no other known species can do. Even now, the child is developing in ways that combine both our biologies." Jack stared at the screen in shock. A father. He was going to be a father to a child that shouldn't exist. "My father doesn't know who the father is yet," Lyra said, her voice dropping lower. "But there's growing pressure for me to reveal this information. Some in the royal court see this pregnancy as an abomination, others as a miracle. Political factions are already forming around the child's existence." Her image flickered as she moved to adjust something off-screen. "I'm being kept in the palace, ostensibly for my protection. But I fear." She stopped suddenly, her head turning toward something Jack couldn't see. "Someone's coming." The fear in her eyes was clear now. "Jack, I need you. Our child needs you. I don't know what will happen when the truth comes out, but—" The door behind her opened, casting new light into the room. Lyra quickly reached forward. "The royal palace on Lumina, the capital city," she whispered hurriedly. "Find me." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving Jack in silence, surrounded by the scattered pieces of his broken glass. For several minutes he didn't move. His mind raced through the implications. A human alien child. A royal heir with human blood. The political chaos this would cause in both civilizations. Then, with sudden clarity, Jack knew what he had to do. Lyra needed him. Their child, a miracle that defied science, needed him. He stood up, glass crunching under his boots, and began to pack. Getting to the Stellar Empire would be nearly impossible for a human, especially without official clearance. But Jack Miller had just discovered he was going to be a father, and nothing in the universe would stop him from reaching his family. Jack moved quickly after receiving Lyra's message. Within 24 hours, he had resigned his diplomatic position, emptied his savings account, and packed only what he could carry in one bag. His plan was simple but desperate: steal a diplomatic shuttle and head for the Stellar Empire. The small spaceport near Geneva had minimal security for diplomatic vessels. Jack had access codes from his position, though using them after resignation would set off alarms. He had perhaps 30 minutes before pursuit would begin. Authorization approved. "Welcome, Lieutenant Miller," the ship's computer greeted him as he entered the stolen vessel. "Set course for the border of the Stellar Empire," Jack commanded, hands flying over the controls. Maximum speed. The shuttle lifted off, its engines humming as it broke through Earth's atmosphere. Jack knew the path to Lumina would take him through 3 danger zones: Earth patrol routes, the neutral zone, and finally the heavily guarded borders of the Stellar Empire. For 2 days, he managed to evade Earth ships by staying on minor shipping routes. But as he approached the neutral zone, warning signals flashed on his console. "Attention diplomatic vessel," a stern voice came through the communication system. You have been reported stolen. Power down and prepare to be boarded. Jack shut off the communication system and pushed the engines harder. The patrol ship fell behind, but the damage was done. Now everyone would be looking for him. At the edge of the neutral zone, Jack's fuel reserves dropped dangerously low. He would never reach the Empire without help. Fortune smiled on him when he detected a small trading post on an asteroid. The trading post was a collection of shabby metal structures, home to smugglers and those who preferred to avoid official attention. Jack docked his shuttle and stepped into a dimly lit bar filled with various species from across the galaxy. All conversation stopped as the human in a diplomatic uniform entered. At a corner table sat a large reptilian alien with scarred scales and one functioning eye. He watched Jack with obvious interest. "You're running from something, human," the alien said as Jack approached. "And that uniform means trouble." "I need fuel and a path into the stellar empire," Jack said bluntly. "I can pay." The alien laughed, a rough sound like stones grinding together. "Credits won't get you past the Empire's border patrols. They scan every ship that approaches." "Then I need someone who knows how to avoid the scans," Jack replied. The alien studied him for a long moment. "Name's Rex. I've run the Empire's blockades more times than I can count." He pointed to his missing eye. "Got this the last time. Why would I risk another run, especially with a human fugitive?" Jack leaned in close. "Because I'm willing to give you the access codes to every human diplomatic channel in this sector." Rex's good eye widened. "That would be very valuable to certain clients." They struck a deal. Rex would use his ship, the Star Jumper, to transport Jack to the Empire. The diplomatic shuttle would be left at the trading post as payment for the fuel and supplies they needed. The Star Jumper was an ugly vessel patched together from parts of a dozen different ships. But Rex assured Jack it was faster than it looked. "She's got a few tricks," Rex said, patting the ship's hull. "Special shielding that confuses most scanners, and a few hidden compartments that might come in handy." They departed the next day, following routes only smugglers knew. Rex proved to be a skilled pilot, navigating through asteroid fields and radiation clouds that larger patrol ships couldn't enter. "So what's on Lumina that's worth all this?" Rex asked on the 5th day of their journey. "Must be something special to risk your career, your freedom, and possibly your life." Jack hesitated, then decided truth was his best option. "The mother of my child is there." Rex's scaly face showed surprise. "A human and an Empire woman. I didn't think that was possible." "Neither did anyone else," Jack said quietly. As they approached the Empire's territory, Rex became more serious. "The outer patrol ring is just ahead. From here on, absolute silence. One wrong move, and we'll have battlecruisers all over us." Jack nodded, tension making it hard to breathe. They were so close now. Somewhere ahead was Lumina, the Empire's capital world. And on that planet was Lyra, carrying an impossible child, their child. The Star Jumper slipped between patrol routes like a ghost, Rex's experienced hands guiding them through gaps in the Empire's defenses. Finally, they'd reached the outer atmosphere of Lumina. "This is as far as I go," Rex said. "The landing pods are there. One should be enough to get you to the surface." Jack extended his hand. "Thank you." Rex took it with his rough, scaled hand. "Good luck, human. You're going to need it." The landing pod hurtled through Lumina's atmosphere, shaking violently as Jack gripped the safety harness. Through the small viewport, he caught his first glimpse of the Empire's capital world, vast cities of crystal and light spreading across the blue-green landscape. The pod touched down in a forested area outside the capital city. Jack gathered his few belongings and stepped onto alien soil, breathing in air that smelled faintly of cinnamon. In the distance, the royal palace rose like a mountain of crystal, catching the light of Lumina's two suns. "Now for the hard part," Jack muttered to himself. He knew approaching the palace directly would be suicide. He needed information and a plan. Following Rex's advice, Jack headed for the city's outer district, where aliens from other worlds were more common. The streets were filled with beings of various species, though humans were rare. Jack kept his head down, wearing a hooded cloak he purchased from Rex. The buildings around him pulsed with soft light, and vehicles floated silently above the ground. From conversations he overheard, Jack learned that the city was preparing for the Crystal Festival, a major celebration that happened once every 5 years when luminous two moons aligned. During the festival, the palace would open certain areas to the public. "It's the talk of the city," said a small furry alien to its companion as Jack listened nearby. "The princess hasn't been seen in public for months, and rumors say she won't attend the festival either." "I heard she's ill," the other alien replied. "Some strange condition." Jack's heart raced. They were talking about Lyra. Her pregnancy was being kept secret, just as she had feared. For 3 days, Jack scouted the palace from a distance, watching the increased activity as festival preparations continued. Security was heavy, but focused mainly on the public entrances. Service workers came and went through less guarded areas. On the day before the festival, Jack's luck changed. In a small cafe, he overheard a palace worker complaining about the extra duties for the celebration. "Another late night," the worker said. "Festival decorations in the East Wing until midnight, then back at dawn for final preparations." East Wing, midnight. It was the opening Jack needed. That night, Jack made his way to the service entrance he had identified. Workers streamed in and out, carrying decorations and supplies. Jack had stolen a uniform from a laundry facility, not a perfect match, but enough to blend in from a distance. "Decorations for the East Wing," he said to the guard, mimicking the local accent as best he could. The guard barely looked at him, waving Jack through with a bored gesture. Inside, the palace was even more magnificent than it appeared from outside. Ceilings soared hundreds of feet overhead, with intricate crystal patterns that cast rainbow light across the floors. Jack followed a group of workers, helping to carry boxes when needed, always moving deeper into the palace. At a junction, he slipped away from the group and consulted the rough map he had memorized from public records. The royal quarters would be in the center of the palace, the most protected area. But how would he find Lyra in this massive structure? Rounding a corner, Jack nearly collided with a small female alien with pink skin and large eyes. She wore the formal dress of palace staff, but with markings that indicated higher rank. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, her eyes narrowing. "This area is restricted." Jack tensed, ready to run, but something in her expression made him hesitate. "You're human," she whispered, her eyes widening. Are you Jack?" Shock froze him in place. "How do you know my name?" She glanced nervously down the corridor. "I am Tella, Princess Lyra's handmaiden." "She described you perfectly." Tella's voice dropped even lower. "She said you might come." "Where is she?" Jack asked urgently. "Is she all right?" "The baby." "Follow me," Tella interrupted. "Quickly, before the guards make their rounds." Tella led him through a maze of corridors, using service passages to avoid guards. Finally, they reached an ornate door with 2 guards posted outside. "Wait here," Tella whispered, pointing to an alcove. She approached the guards and spoke to them. After a moment, both guards followed her down the hallway. "A small emergency requiring their attention," Tella explained when she returned. "We have minutes at most." She pressed her hand to a panel beside the door. It slid open, revealing a luxurious chamber beyond. "Go," Tella urged. "She's waiting." Jack stepped through the doorway, his heart pounding. After crossing half the galaxy, facing countless dangers, he was about to see Lyra again, and their impossible child. The door closed behind Jack with a soft hiss. The room before him was spacious and elegant, with high ceilings and walls that seemed to be made of living crystal. Soft blue light pulsed gently from within them, giving the chamber a dreamlike quality. "Lyra?" he called softly. A figure stepped out from behind a translucent partition. It was Lyra, her silver eyes widening in disbelief. Her blue skin glowed brighter at the sight of him, and the crystals on her forehead sparkled with intensity. She wore flowing robes of royal design, but what caught Jack's attention was the pronounced curve of her belly. "Jack," she whispered, "you actually came." Her voice trembled with emotion. They moved toward each other as if drawn by gravity. When they met, Jack gently placed his hand on her stomach, feeling a flutter of movement beneath his palm. "Our child," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Lyra's eyes filled with tears that glittered like diamonds. "The doctors say the baby is healthy, strong. They've never seen anything like it, a perfect blend of both our species." Their reunion was cut short by the sound of a door opening on the far side of the chamber. They turned to see a tall, regal figure enter the room, accompanied by 4 armed guards. The Emperor of the Stellar Empire was an imposing presence, his skin a deeper blue than Lyra's, with crystals that formed almost a crown across his forehead. "So," the Emperor said, his voice deep and resonant, "this is the human father." The guards raised their weapons, pointing them at Jack. Lyra stepped in front of him protectively. "Father, please. He came across the stars for me, for us." The Emperor's face remained impassive. "Do you know what you have done, human? You have created a diplomatic crisis that threatens the peace between our worlds." Jack straightened his shoulders and stepped forward, gently moving Lyra aside. If he was going to die, he would face it with dignity. "Your Majesty, I came here knowing the risks. Not as a diplomat, but as a man who loves your daughter and the child we've created together." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Love? You speak of love when your actions could restart a war. Isn't that exactly why our child matters?" Jack replied, finding courage in desperation. "For generations, our species have viewed each other as too different to ever truly understand one another. But Lyra and I found common ground. And now, against all odds, we've created a life that carries both our heritages." Jack took another step forward, ignoring the weapons still pointed at him. "This child isn't a crisis, Your Majesty. It's proof that our peoples can come together in the most fundamental way possible." The chamber fell silent. The Emperor studied Jack with unreadable eyes. Finally, he raised his hand, and the guards lowered their weapons. "For months, I have struggled with what to do about my daughter's condition," the Emperor said. "Some of my advisors wanted the pregnancy terminated. Others saw political advantage in it. None considered the child itself." He turned to Lyra. "And you, daughter, you chose this human above all the noble houses of our empire." "I did, Father," Lyra said firmly. "And I would choose him again." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. "There is an ancient prophecy among our people," he said, his voice softer now, "that a child of 2 worlds would come, bearing the light of distant stars in its blood. This child would bridge what was broken and heal old wounds." He approached Jack and Lyra, standing before them with regal dignity. "For generations, I dismissed it as a fairy tale, but when our scientists confirmed this impossible pregnancy, I began to wonder." The Emperor extended his hand, hovering it over Lyra's belly without touching it. "There is power in this child. I can sense it." He looked directly at Jack. "You have traveled far, risked much, broken laws of both our peoples, all to stand beside my daughter and your unborn child. That speaks to your character, human." "His name is Jack, Father," Lyra said gently. "Jack," the Emperor repeated, testing the name. "My daughter has chosen you. And it seems the universe itself has blessed this union in ways we cannot fully understand." He straightened to his full height, once again every inch the Emperor. "I will not separate what the stars have joined. But know this, the path ahead will not be easy. There are many in both our worlds who will resist what your child represents." Jack nodded, relief flooding through him. "We're ready to face whatever comes, Your Majesty." "Good," the Emperor said. Because tomorrow, at the Crystal Festival, I will announce your presence and the coming of a child that will change everything. The Crystal Festival arrived with the alignment of luminous twin moons. The capital city shimmered with celebration as thousands gathered in the palace plaza. Light displays painted the sky, and music floated through the air, a blend of sounds unlike anything Jack had ever heard on Earth. Inside the palace, Jack stood before a mirror, barely recognizing himself in the formal Empire attire. The blue and silver robes felt strange against his skin, but they marked his new position in the royal household. Nervous, Tella asked as she made final adjustments to his collar. The handmaiden had become a trusted friend in the days since his discovery. Terrified, Jack admitted, an entire empire is about to meet the human who fathered their princess's child. You faced border patrols and stole a ship to get here, Tella reminded him with a smile. This should be the easy part. A soft chime indicated it was time. Jack followed the palace guards through crystal corridors to where Lyra waited. She looked radiant in her ceremonial robes, designed to proudly display her pregnancy. When she saw Jack, her skin glowed with joy. "Ready?" she asked, taking his hand. "As I'll ever be," he replied. Together, they walked to the grand balcony where the emperor waited. The moment they stepped into view, a hush fell over the crowd below. Thousands of Empire citizens stared up at the human standing beside their princess. The emperor raised his hands, and his voice carried across the plaza. People of the Stellar Empire, today marks not just the alignment of our moons, but the alignment of our future. For generations, we have seen humans as different, as other. Today, that changes. Murmurs spread through the crowd as the emperor continued. My daughter, Princess Lyra, and this human, Jack Miller, have created something our scientists declared impossible, a child of both worlds. The plaza erupted with sound, some cheers, some cries of outrage. The emperor let the noise continue for a moment before raising his hand again. Change is never easy, he said, but it is necessary. This child represents a new beginning for our peoples. 3 months later, the royal medical chamber was filled with tense silence. Lyra's labor had lasted for 20 hours, longer than normal for either human or empire births. Jack had refused to leave her side, despite the doctor's concerns about having the human present. One more push, the chief medical officer said. Lyra gripped Jack's hand with surprising strength as she brought their child into the world. The first cry echoed through the chamber, a sound somewhere between a human baby's wail and the musical tones of the empire. A daughter, the doctor announced, placing the newborn on Lyra's chest. Jack stared in wonder at their child. Her skin had a subtle blue glow, fainter than Lyra's but unmistakable. Small crystal points, barely visible, dotted her forehead. Her eyes, when she opened them briefly, were human in shape, but with flecks of silver swimming in deep brown. She's perfect, Jack whispered. News of the birth spread quickly across 2 civilizations. On Earth, reactions were mixed. Some saw the child as a miracle, others as a concerning development. But official diplomatic channels between Earth and the Empire opened wider than ever before. 6 weeks later, the time came for the child's formal presentation. Representatives from Earth had arrived, the first official human delegation to attend an Empire royal ceremony. Among them was Commander Davis, Jack's former superior. I never thought I'd see you again, Miller, Davis said when they met. Especially not as the father of an alien princess. Life takes unexpected turns, Jack replied with a smile. The presentation ceremony took place in the Great Crystal Hall. Jack and Lyra stood before the gathered dignitaries, their daughter cradled in Lyra's arms. The emperor himself performed the naming ritual, placing a drop of blessed water on the child's forehead. 2 worlds, 1 future, he proclaimed. I present to you Aurora, first of her kind, bridge between stars. As the emperor spoke these words, something remarkable happened. Baby Aurora opened her eyes, and the crystal points on her forehead began to glow with intense light. The light spread, forming a pattern in the air above her, a map of stars connecting Earth and Lumina in ways no one had seen before. Gasps filled the hall. Such power had never been witnessed in one so young. The Emperor looked at Jack and Lyra, his expression a mixture of awe and confirmation. "The prophecy," he said quietly. "It begins." Jack took Lyra's free hand in his as they gazed down at their daughter. The impossible child who had brought two species together now slept peacefully, unaware of the destiny that awaited her or the boundaries she had already broken simply by existing. In her small face, Jack could see the future, not just for himself and Lyra, but for humans and the Empire. A future where differences became strengths and old enemies became family. Aurora, the child of two worlds, had only just begun to change the universe.